Hello and welcome everyone, it is me, the Lover, also known as the Power To Do List, back for you with another video and another deck profile. I've been getting through, the small bit of XYZ Link Festival before we swap over to the no extra deck one with pure Time Thief out of all decks. Did want to share the list. Maybe there's a couple of, among you that haven't gotten around to, playing the event because you just don't have a deck to play. And this is, if I may say so myself, fairly accessible in terms of the crafting points needed. You can, of course, substitute a lot of things in this list, depending on, what you have and what you don't. I'll maybe go over a couple options as well. But with that out of the way, let's, I think, jump into the deck list and then afterwards look at some replays. Starting off the list is a whole bunch of non-engine. I did decide to play a different level 2 insect hand trap in Wannabe. During the end phase, you can send this from hand to grave, then it excavates top cards from your deck equal to the amount of empty spell and trap zones your opponent has. And if you find a trap card, you can set it, but it gets sent to your graveyard during the next end phase, and you put the rest of the cards revealed back on the bottom of your deck. This is fairly cool for like any trap deck, because it helps you just start playing going second, hitting stuff like a Torrential Tribute, a Phantom Knight, a Share Brigandine, or like an Ice Dragon's Prison, or in this deck specifically, Power Reserve, is very nice, and does help you a bit with going second. Really did enjoy playing with that card, so would maybe recommend giving this at least a look. 3 Ash, this is, here because it A, stops Maxi, B, because it's a generally good hand trap, and C, because you need it for Crossout Designator, because you really want to make sure Regulator resolves. So I think we will talk about that guy next. Regulator is basically an archetypal rescue rabbit that you can tribute off if you control no other monsters, to special summon 2 differently named Time Thieves from the deck, and if an Xyz monster is destroyed by battle while this is in your grave, you can special it back, but it gets banished when it leaves the field. Kind of the goal of the deck is just to make a couple rank 4s, and then, you do have quite a bit of floating effects or just resources in the graveyard that you can easily access. So yeah, Regulator is an absolutely incredible piece, easily enables you to, turn those 2 monsters into a redoer, and with another extender you can also make a Perpetua, which is very, very handy. Some of the other Time Thieves you're running, Winder is fairly standard. This guy is a free body. If you detach a material from an Xyz you control, and on summon, this just grabs you any Time Thief card except himself. Of course, an easy way to add, your archetypal counter trap to hand, which is pretty nice. Bezel Ship is one of the things you run as a one-off, because it's mainly just something you either dump off of Adjuster or just something you can summon off Regulator if you have nothing better to do. Bezel Ship is a free body from the graveyard, because if this is in a graveyard, you can detach a material from an Xyz you control, special it, but it gets banished if it leaves the field. Just a very handy extender to have, similar to a Chronocorder. If this is in a graveyard and an Xyz you control leaves the field by a card effect, this can also be your own, so keep that in mind. If you banish the redoer of its own effect, this will trigger in the graveyard to special itself back, so that's something where you can, easily put another body on the field if need be. And then we also have a one-off Tempor Whale. I'm always tempted to say Temp Whaler, because I think that was the initial OCG translation. Tribute this guy to tribute target a monster the opponent controls, banish it until the end phase. This can come up in niche situations, but I think that has happened like once or twice in like the 10 or 20 games that I played. Mainly, if this is in a graveyard, you can target a Time Thief, return that to hand, and special this back, but it gets, banished if it leaves the field. One of the ones you would be returning off of this is Adjuster, because this easily enables you to, on the follow-up, ensure you have another rank 4, because you can, on the follow-up, just normal the Adjuster, return it off of the Temp Whaler, and then special the Adjuster back off of its own effect, because if a Time Thief you control hits the field, you can special this from your hand, and if this hits the field, you can send a Time Thief card from your deck to the graveyard. But keep in mind, you are restricted to 1 Adjuster effect per turn. So if you special this from hand as an extender, you cannot Foolish Burial. And if you Foolish Burial, you can't use this as an extender. Kind of sad that this is one of the newer Time Thief cards, and it has more restrictions than the older ones. But still a good card nonetheless, so I would not be against, running 3. That's definitely not been something I did regret. Three caught by, two caught by, and a crossout. Functionally, three caught by, technically. Two Time Thieves startup. This is not really a great card, all things considered, because it's just specials a Time Thief from your hand. So you could go down to one of this and maybe play like another level 4 extender. But I did not hate this, mainly because it's a spell you can attach of Perpetua, so you have like a guaranteed way to get a draw in, which is kind of cool off of Redoer. Three Torrential Tribute. Oh god, I love that this card is still playable, man. Such a cool card. Just a quick play board wipe. I think I don't need to explain why Torrential Tribute is a good card to most of you watching, especially if you are older than the age of 18. Three Phantom Knights of Shade Brigandine. Great card. Just a free level 4 extender that also turns on Redoer's third effect, which is the best one. Three copies of Infinite Impermanence. This could probably also be just like another generic trap card you have lying about. I did throw this together based on like a list I built IRL for like silly low powered play with like a friend. In that list, I am playing Lost Winds. So if you want to go the real budget route, you can probably replace these imperms with Lost Winds, or even Forbidden Chalice, if that is more up your alley. One Time Thief Flyback, you do want this as something to attach off of Perpetua to a Redoer that does not have a trap under it, because this in the graveyard is also a DD Crow of sorts. You can banish this from the grave and then target a Time Thief XYZ you control and attach a card from your opponent's graveyard to that as a material. But yeah, that's almost about it, because the on-field effect, not great. Three IDP, very good trap card, has put in quite a bit of work, especially in stealing level 4 monsters, so that I can make an XYZ on the follow-up. Two Time Thief Retrograde. You sadly don't have a way to recur this, that's why I do think you have to play at least two. This is just a spell and trap negate while you control a Time Thief monster, and if you do negate the card, you can attach that card to a Time Thief XYZ monster you control. A very good way to like get the spell and trap effects off Redo alive again, or just get like additional material under a Perpetua to, you know, keep recurring guys. And then two of a very disappointing card in Power Reserve. Special this as a normal monster that is psychic level for dark and has 1900 attack and 2400 defense. A very beefy stat line, funnily enough. And then you special summon a machine Time Thief monster from your hand, deck, or graveyard. If you control a Time Thief XYZ monster you control, it's both a spell trap as material, banishes from the grave, and banish a card on the field. That came up, I think, in a grand total of one time. Yeah, this is mainly just a delayed Redoer. If you can fire this in end phase, you do have a Redoer with a monster and a trap under it on your turn. But it's very slow. It is very odd that this wasn't just like an archetypal Shade Brigandine. I think every person that was following Time Thief is still very confused about that, but it was still like nice to have in a lot of situations. If I was able to like simplify a game state down with like a Torrential Tribute, this usually was something that did, you know, get me back over the top on a follow-up in 99% of cases. Going to like gloss over most of the extra deck, because a lot of this is some stuff I did not go into. Utopia is here for the lightning package that I did not go into. I did make Caster once. Same with Tornado Dragon. Did they matter? Probably not really. Castle could probably be a malevolent sin if you're really just looking for monster removal. That is also pretty cheap. Tornado Dragon does sadly not have a like great replacement unless you want to run like Nightmare Phoenix, but that has the problem of like if you link off, you know, some of the recurred guys here, they do get banished. So Tornado Dragon is maybe something you do want to, you know, spend the UR dust on. Two Time Thief Redoer. I think one of the greatest boss monsters to ever be designed in Yu-Gi-Oh! This guy has 3 different effects, because if you activate his effect, you detach up to 3 materials, and depending on the types of cards those materials had, you apply the following effects. If you detach a monster, this guy gets banished under the end phase. If you detach a spell, you draw a card, and if you detach a trap, you can non-targetingly put a card back on top of your opponent's deck, which, with the effect in standby phase, you can also just steal right back and get under your redoer, which is kind of cute. Very cool cards. Absolutely love this guy, and probably one of the main reasons why I'm so fond of Time Thief. And then here's Accomplice in Crime, Perpetua, another great card. During the standby phase, you can detach a material from her and then just summon back a Time Thief monster. Usually want to set up a Winder in the graveyard to recur so you can ensure more follow-up. And then she can also quick effect target another XYZ you control and attach a Time Thief card from your deck to it as material. That is why I said you might want to at least consider one startup, so you have a spell to attach to your Time Thief XYZs in case that comes up for the draw effect. One double barrel, this is kind of, you know, the third one you can sometimes make. This works similar to Redoer, where you can, when your opponent activates card effect, detach up to 3 different card types from this guy. If you detach a monster, gains 400. If you detach a spell, you steal an opponent's monster until the end phase, and it can't activate, but it can't activate its effects. And if you detach a trap, you can negate the effects of an effect monster on the field until the end of this turn. Also, a solid array of effects, something I did find myself making if I already had Redoer and Perpetua on the field and just could make another guy. So there is that. The rest of the extra, Vespinado's kind of cute. Zeus can come up. I think I did not make Zeus once. A Link Spider, a Dark, a Nightmare Unicorn, and an Access Code Talker. But I have not made a single Link in this deck. So yeah, there is that. But with that out of the way, we will get into 2 replays I have from the event, so you maybe get an idea of how this list operates. Well, in the theming of today's episode, or like this deck profile, I did have to redo this port because someone forgot to swap scenes. First replay here is going first into Utopia. Setting 2 Torrential Tributes isn't the most impressive turn 1, I am well aware of that. But because the deck is fairly low on monsters, a lot of games were like that. I'm just kind of grinding my opponent out of resources in a lot of cases with, you know, these very good generic trap cards like Torrential Tribute, like Ice Dragon's Prison. And then once I was able to like establish a Redoer or two, establish an XYZ or 2, I was kind of able to take over that game. Opponent does not have a play here. I can go for the Power Reserve, first summoning a Bezel Ship, as that is a very good piece of extension to have in the graveyard. Winder here grabs a Retrograde as I turn the Bezel Ship and the Power Reserve into a Redoer. For some reason, tagging that Redoer out, I am to this day puzzled why I did that. I think I was like thinking, if they imperm the Redoer here, they surely have like a way to deal with it. They do have a way to deal with it, but that's only on the follow-up when the Kurikara comes down. Do decide to Torrential that because I do not want to deal with that like big, just, you know, girl chilling on the field. Opponent goes to Onomata pickup for a para. And picks up an Utopic Onomatopoeia and another guy. But we are kind of chilling because we have Torrential Tributes for days here. It's a fairly long game, that's why I split this up. Wannabe here, very cool card, does fetch me one of the most important extenders in this deck, which is going to be that Ice Dragon's Prison. I did steal a lot of level 4s. I do want to admit that. Because, yeah, as mentioned earlier, the deck is fairly low on monsters, so it can sometimes happen that you're playing games where you're just, you know, flipping a couple trap cards for a couple turns, hoping you can stabilize a game state until you can make an XYZ. As you can see me here in the end phase before the Ice Dragon's Prison gets sent off a Wannabe's effect. Anyways, stealing a level 4 from my opponent's graveyard to have an opportunity to make a Redoer here. Using the Redoer here in combat to punch over the Astraltopia, setting the Caught by the Grave and passing back to my opponent. In standby, I'm trying to steal the top card of my opponent's deck. Luckily enough, I do have a counter trap for my opponent's counter trap. So I do not get blown out completely here. Luckily enough, I think I did hit a spell off the top of my opponent's deck here, so I do get another draw in, which luckily enough is a Winder, and get to put back the Silent Honor Dark that my opponent has. I do Winder here, detaching the card my Redoer stole from the opponent's deck. Use the startup here to put an Adjuster on the field, so I also get the mill. Setting up what I alluded to earlier in the deck profile, putting back the Adjuster of a Temp Whaler so that on the follow-up I do have another XYZ. Making a Castle here into a face-down monster, very smart decision, not reading the fact that Castle only can put back face-up cards. Attaching a flyback of a Perpetua here to the Redoer. I think you can usually wait with that a bit, but I was like, okay, yeah, trap's the most important thing. Get that on the redoer. I'm probably going to hit a monster, and here I do use the Perpetua to also get a spell on the redoer, which does, funnily enough, turn the power reserve and graveyard life, which is kind of funny. Tagging out the redoer here, I maybe should have set that retrograde. A bit of Duel Link syndrome kicking in here, even if I'm not playing that game. Once or twice I did like kind of forget that there is a main phase 2 where I still have to set some trap cards. Of course, keep that in mind when you're piloting this deck. But, you know, with me establishing a redoer again and, you know, of course, having to set up for another rank 4, my opponent decides to get out of this game. But with that, we will look at a game where I was going second. Going second here into what you can, according to the sleeves, correctly assume to be Galaxy Eyes Photon Kite deck. Opponent goes to Vanisher, puts a soldier on the board, sends a jumper, adds a galaxy card, and just continues to extend. So we're stuck with a bit of waiting here. Might even cut that part out. I do, you know, Ash the Wizard here. That feels pretty good. So yeah. Software Dragon is made, adds a Photon Galaxy guy back, and then we are able to, you know, stick that again, tribute this, add a Galaxy Expedition, summon a Gept from the deck, Galaxy 100 banishes my Zeus, didn't need that idiot anyways, as you will probably see. Because we hit him with the old classic. Opponent has a monster negate on the field and a way to deal with a special summon monster, so I just set 4 cards and pass. But that's, you know, a pretty convincing setup here. I do go for the first Ice Dragon's Prison, picking up a warrior out of my opponent's graveyard in an attempt to banish the Photon Lord. And after getting hit with a Tachyon Transmigration, I decide to do it again. Get punched by the Soul Flare Dragon here in the end phase. I flip the power reserve, as you do, to enable myself to make a redoer on the follow-up. Redoer is made, and the Soul Flare Dragon does want to take care of that. I can, of course, take out with the Redoer, but my opponent has an infinite impermanence for that, so that is quite unfortunate. As I go and stick the Regulator, my opponent has a Call by the Grave for that, but luckily enough, I do have the second power reserve to still enable myself to make a Time Thief Redoer. So we are kind of chilling here. Winder detaches the Temp Whaler and adds myself a Retrograde to hand. As I go to punch over my opponent's board in the correct order, which is very handy, of course, and pass back the turn with a retrograde set. Opponent goes to their draw phase, draws a card. I do get to redo attach a spell here, which is very nice because that turns on the power reserve in my graveyard and allows me to banish that set monster immediately. Drawing a card off of the redoer because I did hit a spell. Stealing another card here, putting the Temp Whaler back on the field after bouncing the Winder. Winder searching an adjuster here, using the Tornado Dragon, detaching the Winder to destroy that last remaining spell trap. I could have probably also just made a Perpetua here, but I do have quite a bit of gas, so I can just keep cooking, make a Perpetua here after ranking up the Tornado Dragon into a Vespanado. Vespanado is a very nice card to have in this deck. Just to have like a guy you can slap on like potentially, you know, empty rank 4s. But especially the Time Thief XZs rarely do run out of XZs material because you can often just, you know, reattach things in one way or another. Opponent goes for a Galaxy Summoner here. Don't feel like I need to really interact with that in a way that is, you know, necessary. Galaxy Photon Dragon hits the board, which feels like a good choke point to redoer here as they get the Emperor back. But as the board state is looking right now, you can probably tell that this is a very easy enter combat and Vespanado Pierce for game. But with that out of the way, I think I'll be going back to the deck list and maybe discuss a couple more like things you could be running in this list if you do decide on taking this into the event. But as mentioned, this is a fairly straightforward and simple like rank 4 control strategy. You do have access to quite a couple of interesting tools in the extra deck. Even if they're a bit dated, I think cards like Caster and Tornado Dragon are still pretty solid, even if they have like somewhat better counterparts in the Nightmares. But for this deck, they're just a lot more applicable since they do not banish your guys if you XZs. Something you can maybe run instead of, you know, all this link nonsense down here is a Raiders Knights alongside an Arc Rebellion XYZ Dragon. This is, I think, the most straightforward way this deck can go for game. But I think I never missed this once in all of the games. You could, of course, run this if you want a way to, you know, blow your opponent out. Especially if you're a PK player, you probably have these two lying about. So yeah, maybe make those choices depending on what you can spend on this deck. But with all that being said, I really like this deck, man. I would kill for some, like, fully fleshed out Time Thieves support in the TCG, but I think for that we will have to wait a bit more. So yeah, let me know your thoughts on this deck down below, and if you did not play this deck, what did you play for the event? That's always, you know, very interesting to hear, because these, you know, rule sets bring out a lot of different decks. Are you like a loner Andy and just, you know, jam the loner decks the events give you, because those, especially in the recent times, have been pretty solid? Or did you cook something yourself? Maybe something with Time Thief. But yeah, thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll be seeing you guys again next time. But until then, goodbye.